Hi everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where I answer the questions that you have that have to do with your health and fitness goals. So I know I'm on a different page here. I've been doing it on my personal page, and we're switching over to the business page for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it helps me with analytics to see who's watching, but also because I want to get everybody over to this page. I want to be able to use it a little more fully and use my personal page for more of the family and the lifestyle and that kind of stuff. But hopefully you're jumping over. I will post these to my to my YouTube channel when I'm done. And meanwhile, if you want to hop on there and look, every Facebook Live that I've ever done is on my YouTube channel, plus some upcoming videos I'm pretty excited about. So just a quick note, I'm not quite sure there will be a Facebook Live next Wednesday. My husband got me tickets to Cabo, so right? I'm pretty excited. I just need some sun, so we're all good with that. But we have a really great topic today. We are going to be talking about carb cycling and what it is, whether it's appropriate for you, and what it does. Now, I know that this time of year, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of overwhelmed with all of the things that pop up on TV because, of course, it's New Year's resolution. So now it's like, try this, try that, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, blah, 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 blah. And my frustration is, first of all, it's not ever one size fits all. There's not one thing that is going to work for everybody. But the other frustration is that most of the time they're so focused on quick fixes and, you could drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys, that's water. Like, that's not even fat. Which, not that that's a bad thing to drop water, because sometimes that really is appropriate. When you tend to have a lot of fat on your body, you tend to hold and retain more water. So there's something to that, but it just is frustrating to see what, commercially they're trying to push on you. And most of us, if you read the little fine print, it says results are atypical. So, carb cycling can be an option. It's something that does work for me. I have tried, in my past, I've tried almost every, diet possibly out there. And I've also, in the past couple of years, even tried keto, and it does not work for me. I think, first of all, I don't carry a whole lot of fat stores on my body. Now, I do believe that, keto can be an option for somebody who is extremely overweight and carries a lot of excess energy stored as fat on their body. But I think that it needs to be done very intelligently, with some support and maybe some coaching and some counseling alongside that as well. So, I think that it's more than just, let's try the next diet that's coming along and see if it works for me. I also get frustrated because so many people are looking for loopholes and ways to cheat the system, and it just doesn't work that way. When you're really trying to create a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, you have to do what the biology dictates that it's going to do. You can't just go, well, they said it fits my macros, so I can eat some ice cream. It just doesn't work that way. So keep that in mind when you're trying to pick what works for you. And what works for me may not work for you. But I had somebody ask me about carb cycling, and so I wanted to put up a little bit more information about it, how to go about doing it if it's something that is appealing to you. But I also want to talk about the pitfalls and really what it's not. So we're going to include that tonight. But the first thing I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about macros, because I do meet a lot of people when I do goal assessments with people. They have no idea what a macro is. Now, we're talking about a macronutrient. So there's macronutrients and there's micronutrients. And the macros, of course, are the biggest forms of what we're looking for when it comes to nutrition. And then the micronutrients are the things like the vitamins and minerals that we tend to need more smaller or trace amounts of. So macronutrients are the things including proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Now, each of those do different things. So while Coca-Cola would have you believe that all calories matter, and they do, but not in the way that they're kind of telling you, right? Because everybody says, well, moderation in all things. Well, that's cool unless you're a diabetic, because if it spikes your insulin, it's causing problems and you're not addressing the actual problem. You might be dealing with the symptoms by taking insulin and metformin and some other things, but you're not actually dealing with the problem itself. So yes and no. I just am not a big fan of, well, if I only drink one soda a day, even though it's full of sugar, that just might not be the right option for you. So keep that in mind. So carbohydrates are an energy source, right? And that's all they do. They're energy. However, I'm not a huge fan of cutting them all out, because a lot of times when we're talking about healthier, cleaner forms of it, more complex forms of it. Now, complex just means it contains more fiber and nutrients, so it takes longer for your body to break it down and for the sugars to hit your system as glucose. Okay, so a sweet potato tends to have a lot more fiber in it than, say, a Pop-Tart, which a Pop-Tart, they're going to tell you, well, it has vitamins in it, it's enriched. but those are synthetic vitamins. And because that Pop-Tart is ultra processed, it's going to break down super quickly in your system and hit your bloodstream as sugar, like instantly, right? You can feel it. However, a sweet potato, although it's a carb, it does contain sugar, glucose, but it's going to break down much slower because the fiber and the nutrients in it will slow the process of the sugar hitting your bloodstream. So quality matters, quantity matters, right? How many, what the percentage of carbohydrates versus fats versus proteins, that depends a lot on what your goals are, what your genetics are, what you weigh right now, what your body composition is. So again, there's no cookie cutter form that's going to work. You can't hop online and say, well, so-and-so follows this specific meal plan, so that should work for me. It just doesn't work that way. So a protein, right? Now that tends to be more along the lines of meat. There are some plant-based proteins, and of course, a little tougher to do if you're vegan or even vegetarian, because you have to find ways to get complete proteins, and that tends to include a lot more carbohydrates. But you need a certain amount of proteins because that's what helps you to build and maintain muscle tissue along with the rest of the tissue of your body. And so you need those amino acids, and you need them in the right amounts in order to do their job. Your body can also use those as a form of energy because it can break it down into glucose as well. So you can notice that if you're eating a whole lot of protein and a whole lot of carbohydrates and not enough fats, you're probably spiking your insulin too high all the time on a regular basis. So that can be a problem as well. Now, fats need to fall in there. And fats have been getting a really bad rap. In the early 90s, it was all about the low fat product, and there's still a lot of those out there. The downside to that is that, first of all, if we can't have proteins and carbohydrates, what the heck are we going to eat? You can't eat air. But we need a certain amount of fats because your body is made up of lipids, which is fats. The problem is, so many of us eat the crappy ones, right? We're eating deep fried foods. We're eating way too much vegetable oil, which is not good for you, you guys. It's very highly processed, and it's processed with chemicals. So you need to utilize some healthier fats, and you've probably heard of those: avocados, almonds. Now realize those also have carbohydrates in them. Coconut oil, MCT oil. There's definitely some great options out there. And again, your percentages depend upon what your goals are, what your body type is, whether you're holding a whole lot of fat stores on your body. Now here's the problem. Your body cannot burn fat, especially stored fat, if you are putting a lot of sugar. In the presence of sugar, your body spikes insulin, and in the presence of insulin, your body cannot reach into those fat stores and burn fat. So there's 3 things that prevent your body from burning fat, and that is insulin, okay, the hormone insulin, which is how your body utilizes glucose or anything, a carbohydrate. In the presence of cortisol, which is your stress hormones. It's kind of the fight or flight, but these days, so many of us have cortisol that's kind of spiking all the time because we're so stressed out. And also alcohol. Our body cannot burn fat and with those things present in our body at the moment. So again, even if you do great all day, but then you drink a glass of wine, that's actually going to prevent your body from burning fat. You might have done great all day, but if you're drinking a glass of wine every night and can't figure out why you're not burning fat, that is why. And it's not that the alcohol causes fat. Like I said, it just prevents you from burning fat, right? And for up to 72 hours, depending on how much you're drinking. So I get it. Everybody likes to have a drink now and then, but if you're doing it on a regular basis and that's something you can't live without, you're not going to be able to go and reach your goals if leaning out and burning fat is on there. Okay, so what is carb cycling? Carb cycling is utilizing high and low carb days in order to burn fat, but also build and maintain muscle at the same time, which is very difficult to do. So what happens is you're matching the amount of carbs that you eat to your activity level for the day. So if you're like me and you do a leg day or 2 a week, you might want to match your higher carb days to leg day, because for me that's a whole lot of energy expenditure. And I do carb cycle, so I match the days that I get carbs on days that I know that I'm going to have more of an energy output. And if it doesn't work, because mine's pretty strict the way I do it at the moment, I move my workouts around because that's what works for me. Now, here's what carb cycling is not. It is not an excuse to eat a bunch of garbage. It's not. And I hear the same thing with intermittent fasting. People are like, well, I do intermittent fasting, but when in their window they're eating pizza and garbage. Like you can't use it as a loophole. You can't say, well, I only eat carbs during this time, but it's all really highly processed garbage, because again, it doesn't contain nutrients. Our body does not run on calories. It runs on nutrients. It's fuel. You'll find that if you've really struggled with maybe even things like skin conditions, and it's your body telling you something, it's either missing something or something you're eating is causing inflammation. It's trying to tell you something. If you will listen to your body, it will tell you what it needs. So much of us are like, well, I don't care, I'm gonna eat ice cream anyway. We just fail to take the time to think, wow, I'm breaking out in weird places. Why? Well, maybe your body doesn't like gluten. So keep that in mind. So it's not a reason, because processed carbs are processed carbs, and they're going to spike insulin. You might get away with it when you're younger, but let me tell you, even if you're a guy and you're 20 years old and you feel like you can eat anything you want because you just seem to stay really lean, wait till you're 40 and your hormones are different. And now all of the garbage, the toxins and the additives and preservatives that your body's kind of been storing away in a little bit of fat, now all of a sudden your body is in survival mode and you retain fat like a crazy person. So the things that you do now as a younger adult and even a child is going to completely affect your later years. And nobody teaches that in school. At least they didn't teach me. And I'm pretty sure they're not teaching that at this point. It's also not a way to eat unlimited carbs on carb day. That is called a cheat meal, and there's a whole different process, a theory of why we use it. And it's not something that you should be doing on a regular basis, because if you're trying really hard to, I don't like lose weight, let's talk about losing fat, but if you're trying really hard to lean out and become a healthier person, you can't be having regular cheat meals, like say weekly, and think that you're just basically going to undo all the process that you've worked on all week. So keep that in mind, that if now that's different than a free meal, and that's, we'll talk about that on a later live. But for now, just know that, having a free meal here and there is okay, but having unlimited carbs because it's high carb day may not work very well for you. And the older you are, the more important that is, right? Like I said, we can get away with some things when we're younger that we just can't when we're older. It's also, and like I said, it's just not a way to have it's not a regular cheat day. You can't have 2-3 cheat days a week and get away with it. Even if you are somebody who tends to burn it off really fast, it will come back to affect you. It's also not about having no carb, because no carb would mean no vegetables, because vegetables are carbohydrates. They just tend to be really, really nutrient dense, and they have things like fiber that slows down the absorption rate of any sort of sugars that the vegetables contain. So, on days that you are low carb, you're still high vegetable. And a lot of people just don't eat any vegetables because, of course, if you eat a lot of processed foods, they are highly palatable. They're made and designed so that they taste good. The problem is the things that are naturally sweet and taste naturally good, like vegetables and fruits, when you're getting that ultra processed food all the time, you don't taste the sweetness in the vegetable, because those processed foods are so many more times sweeter because of the way they're designed. They want you to become addicted. I remember listening to how they actually design the flavor of Doritos, and they are designed for the Bliss Point, which is to the point where you can't stop eating them. The Lay's thing, I bet you can't eat just one. But not so overly tasty that it overwhelms your taste buds and you quit eating them. So there is a science behind it, and yes, they are trying to addict you to the product because that's how they sell more. I know, I can hear you all go, get to the point, what is carb cycling, what should I be doing? So let's talk about that. Reasons to carb cycle. It's not for everybody. Again, not every diet works for every person. It really depends on where you are health-wise and what your body composition is. Carb cycling works really well when you're trying to build muscle and burn fat at the same time, because what you do is your higher carb days, like I said, land on your days where you are needing some glycogen stores, which is the energy to build muscle that are stored in your muscle. Right? So you might have higher, now it might not just be a high carb and a low carb day. You might have some medium carb days as well. It really just depends on your activity levels. So if you sit at a desk every day, but you work out heavy at night, you might actually eat your carbs surrounding your workout. Or if you tend to be on your feet all day, maybe you have a very active job. Again, it really depends on if you're working or not. So if you have a weekend and you're not working and you're not lifting that day, that might be the perfect day for a low carb day. You don't need the energy, right? Because remember that carbs are for energy source. And I didn't talk about fats, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's your energy source. You need more of that. Now, your body only has so much ability to store sugar, okay? It only can store so much sugar. After that, it stores it in fat, right? So that whole notion of fat creates fat is not exactly true. It's your body will store in the presence of insulin. So, I mean, that's what it is. It's a storage hormone. So keep that in mind that too much of anything isn't a good idea anyway. And there is some truth to calories, right? You know, if you're eating too many calories, no matter what they're coming from, and your body doesn't need it, it's going to store it. The deal is if you're really paying attention and you're eating enough of the right things, like fats are very satiating. You can't eat a ridiculous amount of fat or vegetables for that matter. You can't overeat it most of the time. But if you start eating fat in combination with sugar, then it can become a problem because now your body's spiking insulin. It's already stored as much sugar as it needs. Where's it gonna put the excess? It's going to put it in adipose tissue, right? And by the way, your body cannot store in fat and burn fat at the same time, right? And we just talked about that in the presence of insulin, your body will not burn fat. Part of the deal about carb cycling is trying to help your body become fat adapted because we want it to burn fat as fuel. The problem is our body wants to burn sugar. It will burn sugar first, any sort of carbohydrates. Now, don't tell me, well, I don't eat sweet things. I tend to crave things like bread and potato chips. Yeah, what do you think those turn to in your system? Like instantaneously. Those turn to sugars. They're made of carbohydrates. So, plus they're processed. So again, they're going to break down very, very quickly. So if you are trying to build muscle, but also stay lean or burn fat at the same time, carb cycling might be a really great option for you. It can actually help boost insulin sensitivity. So if you have discovered that you've become resistant to insulin because you eat too much sugar or highly processed food, the problem is your body, anytime that you do something in excess, your body kind of mutes it down. It's kind of like when you walk into a concert, at first it just seems so loud, but after a while, you kind of become insensitive to it. It's the same thing with insulin. If you consistently, your body is spiking insulin because it has to deal with the high levels of sugar in your bloodstream, at some point it kind of gets tired and it just goes, I just don't have that much insulin to give you anymore. And so, or it's still producing insulin, but your body is resisting it. So again, there's lots that can happen there. Okay. Higher carb. So other reasons to carb cycle. It also can help, some of those higher carb days can actually help increase leptin sensitivity. Now, leptin is your hormone that tells your body, hey, dude, I'm full, I'm satiated, I don't really need anymore. Hey, Kathy, this was your idea. But a lot of times when we eat too many carbohydrates, our body doesn't produce leptin because it doesn't hit that satiation. But by going above and beyond calories some days, your body can actually realize, oh my gosh, I'm full. I don't need any more. So it's kind of like if you're always at a deficit, your metabolism slows because it has to preserve energy. That's how our bodies work. That's a survival mechanism. But if we every once in a while eat greater than our body needs, it goes, oh, I'm getting too much here, and your metabolism rises. So that can help that happen, especially if you've been eating really, really low calorie diets, which are really not good for you. Some people that come to me really struggle to lose weight or to really have their body respond to any sort of exercise or leaning out. And it's because they've done so much damage to their body by these crazy, stupid, really low calorie diets where their body just isn't getting enough nutrients. And it goes, well, heck, I'm not going to give up any fat stores. I don't know when she's going to eat again. So that can become a problem in the future as well. Eating a higher carb day can also help with recovery. So if you've had really intense workouts, and again, this is a little different for someone who is just a recreational strength trainer versus somebody who is like playing a major sport. They're an elite athlete. A lot of those athletes use carb management depending on what they're doing in order to support their energy output. And like I said, I'm going to tell you that I've tried the whole, eating really low carb and moderate proteins and high fats, trying to burn excess fat on my body for something specific. And man, my energy level drops. You know, they say you're supposed to hit this point where it's like you feel euphoric and it's amazing. I think that's if you have enough excess fat to utilize. My body just goes, I don't know what you're doing. And it just, my strength seems to leave, my lifts aren't as good. So again, it's not going to be perfect for everybody. You really have to think about how your body responds. Now, on some of those lower carb days, you might have some side effects, right? Your body, because when it has to switch from sugars or glucose in your system, burning those as fuel, when you have to switch to ketones, what your body turns fat into in order to utilize it for energy, it's a little rough on the body. They kind of call it keto flu, but really it doesn't matter if you're going into ketosis or if you're just going lower carb. When it switches from using sugar as an energy source to fats, there's going to be some response from your body that's going to suck. You might be tired and fatigued and like I said, brain fog and really struggling a little bit. So keep in mind that will go away. Just make sure you drink plenty of water, as well as get plenty of potassium, magnesium, and sodium. Guys, water is not the only thing you need. It's the electrolyte balance. And so it's the minerals along with the water that's needed in order for you to maintain great health. Okay. Some of the best ways to do this, like I said, use the higher carb days to coincide with some of your more energy expended days. I have a cyclist who works with me, and so on days that he's going on long bike rides, we actually increase his carbohydrates before he goes on those rides. Now, we don't want to overdo it because we're still trying to burn fat as fuel, but we also don't want him to bonk as he's doing his workout. And you may need to structure it differently according to your goals. There is no one specific. I've seen a couple of articles that say, this is the way to do it. And I'm like, that makes zero sense. I've actually had different coaches do carb cycling with me in completely different ways. I've had one that walked me down on carbs during the week and then would refeed me on the weekend. And I've had a coach who, towards a competition or a goal will, take carbs out multiple days if necessary, depending on what's going on. So there is no one right way. It just has to work best for you. And of course, you want to make sure that you still have some energy too. So that can play a huge role in that. So remember, number one, we eat for nutrients. We don't just eat for calories. So nutrient dense foods are going, no matter what you're talking about, need to be your choice. A really great tip, there's a certain amount of each type of nutrient, vitamins, minerals, things that helps us be optimal. Now that's what I'm looking for. Most people don't even know how to just feel good, right? They're eating the standard American diet, which is so crappy that their body, it's kind of like putting really crappy gas in your car and it kind of sputters and goes, I don't know how to burn this because it's so dirty. That's what your body does. It goes, what do I do? Well, I'm gonna store it because I can't really use it. When you eat optimally, your body runs efficiently. There's a really great app. You just get the free version. It's called Cronometer, Cronometer. And it's really great. It's a little different than MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal goes more off of macros. Are you paying attention to the sugars that you're eating? Are you fitting within your macros according to your goals? The Cronometer tells you, are you getting enough vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin B? It's going to go with the nutrients and the minerals and vitamins that you need in order to run efficiently and optimally. So it's a great way to tell whether or not because if you have deficiencies in those vitamins, you're going to have symptoms of it. There was a day and a time where, people were dying of deficiencies. And these days, of course, everything is artificially enriched, which again, it's synthetic. When it's synthetic, your body just doesn't run as well on it because your body's designed to run on food. That's the way that it knows how to break it down. It knows how to utilize it. It helps your microbiome. And that's the other thing. When you completely cut out carbohydrates, that can be a problem, especially for women. But also there's something where your microbiome needs to be fed. And if you aren't eating carbohydrates, it can actually produce some situations which aren't optimal. Now, there's not a lot of research or feedback on long-term keto and some things like that. And so, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of going completely keto. There are some exceptions to that. That's above and beyond what we're talking about today. But for some people, that might be an option in order to burn the excess storage of fat off their bodies. But again, topic for another day. Okay. Also remember, whatever you do, it has to be sustainable and it has to be safe. think about what you're trying to do. Last week I told you that you don't lose weight to be healthy. You get healthy, and then losing weight is a byproduct of being healthy. Body fat is a storage, it's a survival mechanism. That's what your body, from the beginning of man, that's what it's for. In our ancestors' days, they didn't necessarily have food all the time, and their bodies had to be able to switch between sources of fuel, or if they didn't have food for a while, if they didn't have any options there, their body had to learn to survive. So, our body doesn't like to lose anything. It doesn't like to burn fat. It wants to hold on to that in case we come in times of famine. So whatever you're doing, you have to be able to do it for a long time. If you're doing super low calorie diets or cabbage soup diets or some of the crazy garbage that's out there, whatever you do to get there, you have to keep doing to stay there. So it has to be something. Just think, when you start something, can I do this for the rest of my life? And if it's a no, then it's probably not a great idea. Now, again, sometimes I have short-term goals, and I might do some, things short-term to get there, knowing that I'm not going to stay there, but I try to do it in a way that doesn't affect my body in a really negative way. And also remember that not all carbs are created equal. So again, if you're using chocolate chip cookies as your carbs on high carb day, probably not your best bet. Number one, you're not getting the nutrients, which is kind of half the deal, but also it just burns too quickly in your system. And most people can't just eat one cookie. I don't know about you, I can't just eat one. So then the problem becomes the excess gets stored as fat. Okay, so I'm really interested to hear what you think. How many of you out there have actually tried carb cycling? And if you did you like it? Did it work for you? I'd love to hear what you think about it. So you can either leave a comment below, or you can message me directly on Facebook Messenger. Or if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, please drop a comment below as well. And don't forget to subscribe, because I'm trying to come up with I just want to educate you. That is my goal. I'm not expecting any payback on this. I just want to educate you. My biggest frustration is how many years I was taught the wrong thing. And still, I hear stuff today and I'm going, okay, people, you understand saturated fat is not the problem. I want you to know what's right and what's real, because obviously what we think is right isn't working. So let's be educated on it. That's why we do what we do. So have an incredible night, you guys. Please don't be afraid to give me feedback. I love it. I love to hear from you. It's why I do what I do. Have an incredible Wednesday night, you guys. That is Q&A Wednesday. Until next time.